Oh, hello, welcome back to Oliver's greenhouse. It's another hot sunny Sunday here in the UK. It's been getting super hot recently. Yesterday I had the record temperature in the greenhouse. It was 29 degrees centigrade. It's never been that hot before, not in the last, I don't know, how long have I been doing this for? 2 years, had the greenhouse for? Maybe 3 years. It's never been that hot before, even with all the fans going. The swamp cooler on full chat. I've actually had a thought about that. I'm going to start putting some ice out of the freezer in there as well. Maybe if I can find some freezer blocks small enough, pop those in there with a bit of string on them so I can hook them back out again, just to give it a bit of a boost, because it's been really hot. We've had no rain in the UK for like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks maybe, so no doubt the hosepipe bans will be coming in quite soon. If you do this sort of thing, make sure you've got huge rainwater collection capacity, because greenhouses use so much water, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So today I've got some time. I'm going to be doing 2 separate videos. I'm going to be doing one for the orchid guys, and I'm going to be doing one for the carnivorous plant people. And if you grow both, there's going to be 2 videos which you're going to be interested in, so that's going to be really good. So what I thought I'd do is I'll pick you up a quick look at some of the orchids which are doing stuff, and then we'll have a look at the sad focus for this video anyway. So I'll pick you guys up and have a quick look. Another plant which is likely to be in bloom very soon is the Bulbophyllum lobii. It's got lots of flower spikes coming on it. You can see these sort of hooked appendages here and over this side as well. Here. There's more over this side as well. There's even some hiding behind that pseudobulb over there. So it's going to have loads and loads of blooms on it. That's going to be really, it's always a good shower, that one. A great big massive plant. You've got to have the space to accommodate that fella though. Another plant which is in bloom at the moment, I've only just managed to catch it's one of those ones where you come in and you're like, you've been in the greenhouse 3 times, you haven't noticed it's in bloom. But this is my Bulbophyllum putidum. Sold as Fascinator very regularly. This guy's in bloom at the moment. Centre a shot there. This is the second and last bloom on the plant, and it's been yeah, it's one of those ones, if you don't keep your eye out for it, you might miss it. So that guy's in bloom. Lots of new growth on the plant as well. It looks really good. So yeah, it's obviously enjoying being in this position at the moment. Philip, for God's sake, this is Oliver's greenhouse, not Philip's greenhouse, okay? You're always trying to steal my limelight. I've had enough. It's not good enough, mate. You're going back to Africa. Okay, so the main subject of today's video, unfortunately, is going to be my Cephalotus. Well, 2 of my Cephalotus, my big Cephalotus plants, have taken an absolute nosedive recently. We're talking critical canopy collapse. They look rubbish. They're covered in some sort of weird white fungus as well. I think what's happened is it's just got too warm and too humid in here. I mean, I can just make out it's 99% relative humidity in the greenhouse, and it is 26.5 degrees centigrade, and that will go up. The humidity will stay about the same, but the temperature will go up. It stays very humid in here, which a lot of the orchids freaking love, because it is just like a rainforest. But the Cephalotus, which I think are used to slightly cooler weather, are not enjoying life. So we need to take some drastic action today. And I've been thinking about what to do with them, and I think unpotting them, a proper clear up, get rid of all of that dead material, get rid of the dead leaves, clean them up as much as possible, repot them, and then they're going to go to work, because they used to grow in my this time last year they were growing in my terrarium on my windowsill at work, where there's very low humidity, or well, normal humidity, lots of sunlight, and they were growing very happily. And I think because I've left them in the greenhouse this time, it's just too humid and they hate their lives. So I'll pick you guys up, go down here, we'll have a little look, and hopefully Philip won't steal the limelight again. Okay, so directly in front of you, you can see these were my 2 largest Cephalotus plants, and they look awful. They look absolutely terrible. They've died. Well, they haven't died, but there's lots of new growth, but they've got loads of, they just look rough as guts, basically. They are suffering. If we zoom in, Philip, for God's sake, you're just everywhere today. He loves the greenhouse. I can't be angry with him. He's too cute. There we go. So as you can see, lots of dead leaves, some sort of weird white fungus on the top of this cap here. It sort of rubs off. It's not very nice. I've ummed and ahed about spraying it with like a light sulfur mix to see if that would fix it. And to be honest, my experience with fungi is you're not really going to kill it off, because it will sporificate, it will come back, and it will just always be a pain in the backside. So, and the other one's not so bad, but it's also not happy. It's still got a bit of that white fungus on it in places, some dead leaves. So I figured it's time for drastic action, especially with fungus as well. Humidity and fungus. There's Philip, he's sort of like helping to tidy up some of those bits down there. My experience is with fungus that you need to change your culture more than anything. So we're going to be trying very hard to put it into these plants into a drier environment where they're going to be a lot happier. We're also going to be unpotting them, getting rid of all of the old crud off of them as much as possible. So then by removing that dead material, we're also going to be encouraging air movement. It's not like they don't get enough air movement here. They're right next to this fan here. See the big fan, the one that spins constantly up here, and also the swamp cooler down by my backside blows a lot of air out here. If you look at my t-shirt, it's constantly rippling just with the amount of air that's been blown this way. So it's not that I haven't provided enough air movement, it's just too humid. So it's pick them up, we'll take them into the house. The kids are probably going to get involved because they're up, it's early Sunday morning, and we're going to get these guys out, give them a clear up and see what we can do. Also, it'd be an interesting opportunity to have a look at the root system. So let's do that now. Right, so this is my smallest of my large Cephalotus, and I thought we'd have a zoom in so I can show you in some detail what it is I'm talking about. So we've got quite a few dead pictures. We zoom right in, super close up. There we go, quite a few dead pictures. These guys just happen normally and they sort of fall off, and so do some of the dead leaves. They're not usually an issue. But if you look closely, there's some white sort of fungus growing on the top of the lid of this newly forming picture. There's some more, the more you dig, the more you'll find. There's also this picture here, has got some on top of it as well, and here. It doesn't seem to necessarily harm the living pictures, but it definitely feeds off the pictures which are dead or dysfunctional, and that's not good. So if we pan over to the big one, which is over this side, you can see it in much more detail. So I've removed a lot of dead pictures from here. I just sort of grab them and just put them off. We don't need them to be on here. And once again, this sort of white fungus is attacked. It's quite a common feature with Cephalotus. They can get this. It's probably partly to do with, in my instance, a lack of feeding. I probably underfed the plants, and also just too much humidity, too warm and too humid. So what we're going to do is get here's one here is quite badly affected. See, that's a living one, that one. So what we're going to do is unpot these. I'll do the little one first, and then we'll have a look at, no, I'll do the big one first, the one that's directly in front of you, and then we'll do the little one. I've decided to film in the greenhouse because the light's a lot better, and it's going to make making this video easier for me and more visible and enjoyable for you guys. So the first thing to do is to get this guy out of the pot. Okay, so just be warned, with Cephalotus they are going to pour some sort of weird funky goo all over you as soon as you tip them up. So I like to tip mine up first of all to stop that stuff from going all over your hands. Now the next thing to do is I like to just hold the plant with one hand like this and just lift, and that way you'll get the pot off without causing any major issues to the plant itself. And I can smell the media that the plant's growing in, and it smells okay. There's a sort of a funky whiff, but I think that's probably coming mainly from the juice I just poured out of the pitchers. So what I'm going to do is just there's even a little Cephalotus growing in there as well, and a little Cephalotus stolon. What I'm going to do is, and these guys got very fine black roots, so you're going to need to be sort of pretty careful when removing soil from this, because what you'll do is you'll break a lot of these roots off. Now in previous times when I've done this, there's like a central core of roots that you need to be particularly careful of. What it's standing on there, that's the central core. So I would suggest in this instance to get off as much as you can, okay? But don't really pull, if you try and break this apart, you'll ruin loads and loads and loads of roots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get any loose stuff off, and then I'm going to take this outside, the whole plant, and I'm going to wash it off using the, what's it called, the hose and the sprayer head, just to clean this off, because if you pick it apart with your fingers, you're going to break loads of roots, okay? Right, excuse the noise of the swamp cooler. I'm just going to have a quick sip of gin and tonic. I won't tell you what time of the morning it is, but the sun's not over the yard arm yet. Ah, lovely. I've washed this guy off, and what I thought I'd do is I'd show you the root and stem structure of a very large, or what was once a very large, mature Cephalotus, because some of you might never have seen anything like this. So here's a good opportunity to show you. So here's the heavily branching underside of the Cephalotus here. So it produces these little stems from like a central crown. This is one of the stolons, so this is like an adventitious shoot that comes off. You can see what happens when they mature, like this one did. It's then become like its own little plant. So where these have taken root, like this one's got a root on it just here, you can actually snap these guys off and pot them up separately and then produce little plantlets that way. I'm not going to be snapping anything off this guy because it's not well. And just bear in mind, whatever is going on in the crown will be directly attributable in most cases to what's going underground. Now this had quite a good healthy root system on it, but if we zoom in and look closely, so I've zoomed in close up here to give you a better idea of the root structure. These nice brown roots are nice and healthy and vibrant. But further down, there's a few live ones in there, but a bit further down you see it's gone this sort of like dark colour. Some of the roots have gone really black. These here are not responsible for doing anything. That one was, but the tips aren't. These tips of these roots here are not functioning. They're not carrying water and minerals up to the plant, and in the same way the plant isn't transferring nutrients back down to the roots. So these are not doing anything. So that's a clear indicator there was the start of some root death going on here. So it's just as well we unpotted it when we did. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through this crown here and I'm going to pick off all of the dead stuff. The beauty about irrigating with the hose is it blows a lot of crud off the bottom of the plant anyway, so it reveals all of the bits which are alive and exposes the bits which are dead. So I'm going to set about clearing all of this off. I've got some tweezers. These are very, very useful if you're going to do this, because you can just grab leaves. You can reach inside the crown of the plant and grab dead material and hook it out as well. So I'm going to go through the whole plant doing this, and once it's done I'll turn the camera back on. We'll have a look at what's left. Right, I finished stripping all of the dead old mankiness out of the crown of this Cephalotus here, and you can see I've just left all the stuff that's viable. I've taken all the leaves off which are going to die you know, soon, and even deep down inside here I've picked all the rubbish out. There was definitely a dense accumulation. I mean, you can look how much cleaner it looks underneath. I move my hand out of the way. Got rid of all that, oh, pardon my French, all that rubbish that had built up in there, all the dead little pictures and these strands here. These things sort of build up quite a lot as well, and I think this would be a really, really good idea to do when you are repotting your Cephalotus, to go through with a set of tweezers and pull off all of this stuff, because I think this might be a real root cause of the dreaded crown rot on Cephalotus, is just the general build-up of rubbish that occurs as the plant's growing. Because obviously, I mean, you can see how much of this stuff I got out of just that one plant. I've got another one to do yet, warranted it's not as big, but this will hold a lot of moisture. It will start to decay and rot, and that's going to promote fungal growth. So I think it's a really good idea to go ahead and actually make sure you pick all this stuff off with a pair of tweezers every time before you repot, because I mean that guy's nearly ready now. That will be repotted into probably a similar size pot, although maybe not quite as big. I do have some here, so these are the square pots I prefer to use. I think this is a 5-inch pot. It came out of, if I pick it up from the floor, this massive pot, and that's why I want to put it in, because actually it's not as big as it once was by any stretch of the imagination, and it will hang pleasantly off the edge of that, and I won't have to dress it with too much gravel or anything like that. And as you can see, the root system isn't ginormous. It doesn't need a huge amount of depth. So also what I would say is, before we move on to the next bit, this has been quite a confidence raising exercise as well, because if we zoom in on the crown, there's a lot of new growth all over the whole plant. Lots of new pictures, lots of new leaves all over it, and it's got a pretty healthy root system on there. It's still producing these little stolons, so I think it's probably going to pull through perfectly fine. So I'm going to get on and do the next one now. Okay, so I've got both my Cephalotus now completely dead wooded. It's probably where my mind wants to go immediately with that. I've taken all the crud out of them. They look quite sparse, but there's definitely going to be a lot more airflow now moving through the crown. So the next thing to do is to pop these guys up. Now I'm going to be using my standard carnivorous plant Cephalotus mix. So this is peat moss, about 50%, this needs mixing up, 50% perlite. There's also, for what I use for Cephalotus and also for Drosera regia, there's quite a lot of aquarium sand in there as well. It may not be immediately obvious. If I zoom in on my hand, you can see all the little particles of sand in there as well. So that's going to really encourage drainage. You don't like, these guys do not like to sit in a saturated environment. I do grow them on the water tray method, and it seems to work very well up until now. And I think that's partly because I hadn't repotted them in enough time, and for also the other reasons which I've already discussed with you. So if I zoom over here, they're both going to be going back into, they're going to be going to square pots because they stack better together. What I like to do with this, because obviously what you'll find is over time, through watering, a lot of the peat will eventually disappear out the holes in the bottom. So what I like to do is get a little bit of sphagnum moss. It doesn't have to be tightly sort of compacted. And all I do is I just poke it down inside the holes like that. And I close up maybe sort of like 3 or 4 of the holes in the bottom. It just sort of pokes out the bottom. And that does 2 things. So it stops the peat from eventually being washed out of the media. And it also acts like an excellent wick. So what that does is, because that bit's touching the water in the tray, rather than the bottom of the pot just swimming in water, it basically wicks some of that moisture up into the potting media that the plant's growing in. And it seems to work very well. Like I said, I think the sudden decline of these Cephalotus has mainly been through lack of feeding, too humid an environment. I think that's really the main. And what I like to do is I like to just do the uppermost holes in the bottom of the pot because they're kind of recessed, and that works very well. So that's what I'm going to do to both of these pots before the plants go in them. Okay, so how most of you know, I don't like to work with really wet potting media for carnivorous plants. It just makes everything a big gloopy mess, and it can really be a pain in the backside when you're trying to pot a plant like this up. Not quite as bad as some of the sundews, where you'll find a lot of it will get stuck to the actual tentacles and the leaves of the plant. So I like to get my potting media sort of just damp like this, so it's not super claggy, it still falls apart, but you're less likely to get sort of little voids and stuff forming in the pot as you pot it up. So a just damp potting media is a lot easier to work with, and that's what I would recommend. It works better. I have a lot more success and find it a lot easier to pot doing it that way. So I'm just going to get on and fill some of these pots up. It's a good idea to just give them a little tap. So put some media in there and just, and what that'll do is that'll get rid of some of the if there are any voids forming as you're filling it up, that'll help to knock those out. Okay, so I've approximately filled the pot a third of the way, maybe a little bit more, take a little bit out, like this. And then it's a good idea to offer the plant up to the pot to see where its final height's going to be. That's about spot on there, that is. It's really good. So I don't know whether you can look down the side of the pot there, but the finer fibrous roots here, where it's started to be heavily branching, they're just resting against that now. So that'll be the point of final plant height. So we don't want to fill it up any more than there. And now it's just a case of filling it in around the outside. Right, once you've got it all potted up, I like to leave a gap between the rim of the pot and the final soil height of about, I don't know, the tip of my finger. It's probably 1/4 of an inch, something like that, because we're going to use that to fit the top dressing in, because we're going to top dress these pots with just some normal aquarium sand, or gravel's also very good. And what that's going to do, it's going to inhibit moss growth, okay, because you will find moss will grow quite happily on the surface of the media. What I like to do once you finish as well is just to give it a spray off like this, and what that'll do is that'll wash any bits of gravel off the plant itself and hopefully down back onto the surface of the pot. So that gets rid of a lot of the rubbish like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to top dress it with some sand or some gravel. I'm actually going to use some gravel on this because I've got loads of it. So here's a bag of aquarium gravel. I use this for top dressing a lot of the pots because it really stops the moss, and also it's quite good as an additive if you're going to be growing something like Drosophilum or Drosera regia, because they like that really gravelly, free draining mix, and it's great for top dressing Cephalotus because it represses the weeds and also it really frames the plant, makes it look really nice. You just got to be careful when you're doing this. Lift the plant up slightly. There'll be some flex between where the root crown is and the surface of the media anyway, so respect that, but also you can use that to your advantage to lift the plant up and actually get some of this gravel in. And you want to make sure you work it under the plant all the way as well, and don't be afraid, fill it up, get it nice and flush with the rim of the pot, and use your thumb to work it underneath towards the base of the plant. And I think actually that extra distance, that extra bit of separation from the media is also going to be beneficial for air circulation and to repress the growth of weeds. So get it right in there. So I suggest fill all four corners as far in as you can. A little sort of like chucking motion really helps. And then lift the plant up and make sure that gravel's getting worked right the way underneath the plant, right the way up to its root crown, that being the point at which the crowns emerge, the roots emerge from the bottom of the crown. Work it in. And we're pretty much there with that guy now. Just going to give it a final spray off. It's also a very good idea to wash your gravel off before you use it. Same with your aquarium sand, because it can, I know this is pretty much, this stuff's like sold as being like almost straight to fish tank, but it's probably a good idea to give it a rinse off beforehand. Just get rid of any dusts, any potentially harmful mankiness like salts and stuff. It all comes from rivers, so I wouldn't worry too much. And that's that guy done. That's one of them anyway. So the end product should look like this. See the way the gravel sets it off, because it's a lighter colour, makes it look a lot nicer. Now these guys for the meantime are going to be going outside and growing with my king sundews under a shade cloth, because it's just too humid in here and we don't want to put them straight into an environment that they clearly haven't been enjoying. So I'll get on and do the last one and then we'll recap and sign this video off. Okay, so what have we learnt from this exercise? Probably the main thing is high humidity. We've had a look at the root system of both these plants, and there was some, what I perceive to be, some form of root death warranted. Cephalotus are known for having very fine fibrous roots after a certain point. However, from closer inspection, some of those roots were definitely not functional. So I think in this instance, Cephalotus, high humidity, not a very good idea. I would say you want to keep humidity around 60% maximum maybe. What's it in here at the moment? It's 28 degrees, that's hot, and it's 95.8% humidity, which is great for the orchids and also great for the nepenthes as well. Probably a little bit hot because I've been opening the door backwards and forwards, but it's not great for Cephalotus. Okay, they're going to retain humidity, especially with that build up of humus in the crown of the plant as the plant grows and pitchers die off, and so do leaves. So that's probably the main contributing factor. I think the plants are going to be fine. They're going to go to work into the terrarium. There's a lot less humidity there, and they grew very happily there before. In fact, I'm going to take the whole Cephalotus collection there as well, because I think it's happened to these guys, it might happen to the others. There's no perceivable reason why it wouldn't. So, and also, another thing we've learned is that Philip is an attention-seeking moose knuckle. So, if you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, like down below. Hit the subscribe button to help support me and improve numbers and stuff. Hit the little bell button as well, you'll get notified when I do upload, and I'll see you next time at Oliver's Greenhouse. Thanks for watching.